I just finished watching this episode of Scott Pilgrim, and my man fumbled the bag. Like, bro, it's like, you made it. You made it to the finish line. You got your dream girl. Like, this man literally starts off the show having, like, a dream sequence of his dream girl and seeing her in his dream. And I'll talk more about this, like, supernatural element in a second, but it's like he had this whole dream sequence at the opening of the first episode about his dream girl. He meets her and he manages to go so far with her, in fact, that he's in her freaking bed. Like, this man legit, like, is in her bed, and he decides to mess it up saying he's not ready. I'm like, bro. Like, okay, I understand anxiety and all that. I'm okay, being serious, putting memes and jokes aside. Yes, I fully understand. You know, there's anxiety and stuff at play and all that. But still, it's like, bro, you managed to do something that, like, only romance characters can dream of. In the first episode. Because it's like, most of the time when you have, like, romance anime or any anime has, like, romantic feelings between characters, that takes, like, oh man, like 12 episodes just to hold hands. Not including a kiss scene, which is a whole other season usually. And then, you never get anything else besides that. It's like their relationship kind of degrades a little bit until like the final episode or chapter. So it's just like, my man Scott, you got so far. You got so far, bro. But okay, memes and jokes aside, let's take a few moments to talk about this. So, disclaimer, this is my first ever experience with Scott Pilgrim. I legitimately have never read, I think it's a comic, I have never watched the live action, I believe it had something else, I could be wrong there, but like, I've never seen anything to do with Scott Pilgrim. I know it's a popular series. I know there's a very huge fan base because I know that anywhere I went years ago, I would see just, conversation of Scott Pilgrim. People would talk about like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I believe that was the name. Correct me if I'm wrong. Once again, I've never actually watched or read Scott Pilgrim before. But basically, this is my first time ever experiencing Scott Pilgrim, and the reason for that is because I watched that trailer, and the trailer was, whoa, like, I liked the trailer. It was good. And I made a video on that like a month or two ago talking about that trailer and how much I really enjoyed it. And I gotta say, like, I went into this episode, didn't know if I was going to enjoy it or not, but damn, what an episode. What an episode. I mean, even if we disregard, obviously, the spicy scene here, this is a legitimately quirky first episode. Like, there is a lot of, like, a charm to it. There's a charm and funny atmosphere to this series that has a serious tone to it, but also an unserious tone to it. Like, the very ending of this episode is really interesting. Like, here, let me kind of show you here. So basically, our main character, he gets, like, punched to death. Like, he legit dies. And, like, the sequence of how he dies, he basically turns into coins here. And it's just like, what? Like, it's just like, it's a very shocking moment, like, when this whole clash here happens, and, like, Scott literally, he just dies. Like, he turns into change here. It's over. And it's like, obviously, this world, you don't know if this world is wanting to stay realistic or if it's really just trying to act like it's in a video game. And I don't know this yet because, once again, this is my first experience with Scott Pilgrim. So I'm going to take an assumption, an educated guess here, is that this is like a game world or something. Because it's like, when the episode began, like, it literally started with like a title saying to be continued, press start or whatever, that was the episode title. So I'm going to assume that, like, the concept of this series is set, like, with a video game-like tone. For instance, like, you just have, like, continue slots, put coins in the machine or whatever, the arcade machine, you're able to continue with your life, something like that, I'm assuming. And especially when you have this, like, whole evil organization that we see here in, like, the middle of the episode that is spying on Scott. Definitely not an Ava reference, by the way. Like, this whole organization, like, spying on Scott and saying that they're a league of, like, evil ex-boyfriends. It's like, clearly the show has this nice blend of, like, not serious and serious tone to it, and I like that. It honestly, the charm of this show reminds me of, like, Trigger anime. Like, Kill la Kill, Kiss Naiver, not Darling in the Franxx, to be honest with you, but it reminds me of just like Studio Gainax, or reminds me of Studio Trigger. That's literally what I'm reminded of when I watched this show. I was just like, this feels like something that they would work on, because it has that, level of comedy to it. It has like that quirky nature, while also having that very serious undertone that is going on behind the scenes, that if you pay attention to, you could see it kind of progressing, and I do like that. And so, as for my first ever experience with Scott Pilgrim, I like this show. I like the characters. There's definitely some complicated themes going on here with this show. I mean, you have the whole aspect of running from your past, obviously. You have the element of trying to start a new life, or figuring out what to do with your life. You have the ability of, like, I guess, being honest and telling others how you truly feel. For instance, Scott has this girl that thinks that, they're actually boyfriend, girlfriend, but they're really not. And he's not, telling her the truth. He doesn't have the heart, so to speak, to be a little bit cruel or cold, to just be straight up with her and say, yeah, we're not really going out. There's a lot of things that this show does that obviously other shows have done in the past, but there is some depth to this, and I can see why this has definitely garnered quite the fan base. Now, there is a few things I do want to talk about before I kind of, get into anything else. I have heard that this first episode changes the source material. Now, like I said, once again, I'm an anime only, technically. This is the first time I've ever really witnessed anything Scott Pilgrim related. From what I've been told is this element here where Scott dies is actually not in the original source. Now, from what I heard, and I tried very carefully not to spoil myself, but apparently that this is a reimagining of the story. Like, this is completely different from, like, the comic or the live-action movie. And so, technically, this experience of Scott Pilgrim is something that everyone could come into and enjoy without any prior information, at least according to my understanding. I feel like, at least from what I watched from this first episode, you don't necessarily need to know the previous works to know what's going on here. I'm willing to bet you if I did, though, I probably would notice some references or maybe some nods and Easter eggs throughout this episode, but definitely, I probably would. But I don't think in terms of the story material, I need to actually see the previous stuff. But apparently there is a reimagining going on with the story, so that's interesting. So that means that it's going to be fundamentally different than what people actually think it's going to be. So this is a new experience for everyone, not just, let's say, me, but anyone that likes Scott Pilgrim. So that could be a good or a bad thing, depending if people just wanted to see their favorite series in an anime cartoonish style. So I guess there could be a negative note to that. But anyways, let's get into a few other things. So we have two characters that obviously are the main spotlight within the show. We have Ramona and Scott. Scott, our title character, and Ramona, which is, his dream girl. And it's very clear from her atmosphere, or just who she is as a character. This is just my early impressions of her. She has a lot of mystery about her. She's the new girl in town, and it's very clear that basically she's running from her past. She's running from whatever happened. She has a league of ex-boyfriends, and regardless of how hilarious that is and how you might not be able to take that seriously, you could look at it from another direction. That she clearly is someone that is very messy with relationships, and she doesn't know how to properly have a relationship, and so anytime something goes sideways to a degree, she runs from it. That's what you can kind of assume is going on here, is that the whole League of Ex-Boyfriends is basically Ramona's, character running from her mistakes, her past, and not really willing to accept the consequences of her actions, even if she isn't fully at fault. To have these many people fall in love with her, and then to feel like they're still in love with her, or they have a right to be able to define, who should be her next boyfriend, definitely says that there is some toxicity with her character. Even if she is unintentionally doing it, I think there is some toxicity there. So Ramona as a character, she isn't like a cut and dry character. There is definitely some complexities to her, and I like that. I mean, this brief little flashback we get, I don't know if this is necessarily her real flashback, but the fact that she's basically in middle school here, and you see her, smoking, it definitely implies that she was a delinquent. She was definitely not probably someone that always strictly followed the rules, etc. She was always someone that was like the outcast, so to speak. She was cool, but it seems like she was someone that just did not want to listen to people. And so that is my impression when I see this image of her character. Once again, I don't think she's probably a bad person. She could be a bad person, but I don't, at least right now, think she's a bad person. But that obviously can change. As for Scott, Scott as a character, he is obviously a freeloader. He's staying with his friend and all that, and this is not really fully clarified, I think. Maybe I missed it, maybe I need to rewatch the scene completely. But it doesn't seem like it's fully clarified, like every little detail that happened to him. But basically, he's a freeloader, he's a part of a band, he's trying to get popular, typical stuff, and he seems like very carefree with his life. He doesn't seem to have like a lot of stress. He seems to be more or less just going through life aloof, like, or just flowing through life, like down the stream, and letting life take him wherever life wants to take him. That's what it looks like to me as a watcher of Scott Pilgrim. And it seems like, he definitely will go for his desires. Like, he's someone that has commitment as well. Like, I mean, he wanted to meet his dream girl, as you could see here, and eventually when he realized that she worked for, Netflix and all that and delivered DVDs, holy crap, it's hard to believe that, this makes me feel old, but yeah, I remember ordering DVDs from Netflix back in 2008 and 9, and I know a lot of people are thinking like, huh, Netflix did that? Yeah, Netflix actually delivered DVDs. I remember getting, like, The Dark Knight on DVD. I remember getting, even Dragon Ball episodes, like, on DVD, yeah. So it's like, seeing this definitely kind of was nostalgic to a degree. But Scott obviously sitting here and waiting for her to arrive at the door for multiple days shows his commitment for what he wants. So there is an element there that I do like. It shows that if he wants something, he will definitely fight for it. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, overall, how do I feel about Scott Pilgrim? I like the first episode. I legitimately do. I saw people complaining about it, apparently because they changed things. I don't know necessarily if, that was a good change or not, but at least from my perspective, I like this. And also, another thing I saw people complaining about was that, is this really an anime? Well, it's made by a Japanese animation studio, made in Japan. Yeah. It's an anime, okay? It's an anime. It may look cartoonish, but it's a freaking anime. I mean, it's like saying, Panty and Stocking and all that isn't an anime. Yeah, it looks like a cartoon, but that is legitimately an anime. Just because the art style doesn't look like traditional anime doesn't mean it's not an anime. It's made by a Japanese studio. So, just FYI. I wanted to shut that out real quick. But okay, I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for watching. May all of you have a fantastic day or night wherever you live. Leave me a like if you enjoyed the video. Chibi out.